A perfect afternoon to our esteemed guest and speaker for today's lecture, Mr. Ashok Belani, Group President MP Value India, our Honorable Chairman, Dr. R.K. Tyagi sir, our Director, Sir, Professor A.P.S. Rathore, Professor A.K. Vyas sir, Professor Ravindra Nagar sir, Professor Jyotirmay Mathur, Professor Love Bhargav, Mrs. Anita Bharadwaj, wife of Professor Bharadwaj and President of the Society, friends and family of Professor Bharadwaj, our eminent panelists, dignitaries, and beautiful audience. Today, I welcome you all on the occasion of the third Professor Bharadwaj Memorial Lecture, organized jointly by the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Department of Management Studies, and MNIT Innovation and Incubation Center, TBI at MNIT Jaipur, in association with Professor Avadhesh Bharadwaj Educational Society. Before we move further, let me briefly introduce Professor Avadhesh Bharadwaj, on whose memory we organize this lecture every year. Professor Avadhesh Bharadwaj did his BTech Mechanical from MEM Engineering College, Jodhpur in 1984, and his PhD from MRC Jaipur in 2002. He was a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and had more than 30 years of experience in research and teaching. Entrepreneurship was his passion, and he worked in various areas of research in engineering and management. He was a chairman and member of different governing bodies and expert committee of Government of India related to research, innovation, and entrepreneurship development. He was the founder member and lead of the team that established MISC at MNIT Jaipur in 2016. He had conducted more than 200 entrepreneurship development programs for the benefit of startup ecosystem of Rajasthan. He was one of the vital flag bearers of innovation and entrepreneurship in the state and worked tirelessly to enhance the entrepreneurial climate in Rajasthan since 2002. He conducted many workshops, brainstorming sessions, and numerous mentoring sessions for the students and prospective entrepreneurs to ignite the spirit of entrepreneurship in the voices of startup growth. Now, I request Professor Jyotirmay Mathur to kindly give the program's opening remarks as Head Mechanical, Head MISC, and more importantly, as a close associate of Professor Bharadwaj.
Thank you, Monica. Very good afternoon, all of you. On behalf of the Mechanical Engineering Department, as officiating head, as Dr. M.L. Mittal is on leave, as well as the head of the MNIT Innovation and Incubation Center, I welcome Chairman Board of Governors, Dr. R.K. Tyagi sir, Shri Ashok Belani sir, our guest speaker of the day, Professor Rathore, Professor Nagar, Professor Bharadwaj, A.K. Vyas ji, and all other colleagues, friends, family members of Professor Avadhesh Bharadwaj as well. And
Jyotirmay, sorry for interruption. Can we request the IT team to enable your video also?
Sir, I'm sitting in the same room where Professor Rathore is there.
But I can't see your videos. I am just seeing in the picture of Mr. Belani.
Oh.
Can you just tell the IT to enable your videos?
Yeah. Vikas, can you call sir and
Vikas, can you call sir and do that?
In fact, he is sharing the changing face of Indian auto industry.
Yeah.
Yes, now it is there. I can see Mr. Belani. I can see.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Yes,
on the occasion of this third Professor Bharadwaj Memorial Lecture, it's my duty to give a brief introduction of Mechanical Engineering Department, which Professor Is it? Okay, no? Okay, fine. So, Professor Bharadwaj was a faculty member in Mechanical Engineering Department, a professor here, and he was also instrumental in getting the management department set up. He was instrumental in bringing the incubation center to MNIT as technology business incubator. So Professor Bharadwaj was a multifaceted personality, a thorough academician, as well as a thorough manager. He was the first coordinator of Central Seat Allotment Board when the centralized counseling of BTech seats in India took place through an purely online mode. So he was kind of a go-getter, and he has so tremendous contribution in the growth of MNIT that we simply cannot put it in words. Above that, he was so simple and kind-hearted person. And in my association of more than 20 odd years with him, I don't think there was a single moment when I saw him with anger or with high temper. And that is the beauty of his personality. And therefore, each and every member of MNIT still remembers him. We still feel that he is here with us. At the same time, we miss his physical presence with us. So with this, I really look forward to have the guest invited talk by Mr. Belani, who is our own alumnus from this department, which is one of the oldest department of MNIT. And mechanical department, I'm sure when Mr. Belani had left the institute, was one of the most vibrant departments, and I can say very great pride that it is still one of the most vibrant, active, productive department of the institute. And I'll just give you two examples to support my statement. There are 12 patents awarded to faculty members in MNIT. And out of those 12 patents, 10 patents are coming from this very department, mechanical department alone. That is one. The second fact which supports my statement is that if you look at Google Scholar and if you identify 5 top contributors from MNIT in academic publications, the 5 top most cited faculty members, 3 of them are from mechanical engineering. So that is just a brief to tell you how vibrant and how active and how contributing this department is to the growth of MNIT. We have expanded our department as the technology started expanding. So now the department is working on composites, prosthetics, productivity, ergonomics, energy efficiency, alternate fuels, tribology, and you name any topic which is contemporary, which is new, and at least you would find one of our 32 faculty members working in these very many areas. So with this background, let me switch over to MIIC, MNIT Innovation and Incubation Center. Again, this was a brainchild of Professor Avdesh Bharadwaj. He, together with the then director, Professor Bhatt, they conceptualized this center in 2014. 2016, they got this approved from DST. So it's a TBI of DST. 2018, this center got its own building. So the MIIC Incubation Center basically is housed in a 50,000 square feet building. It's an independent incubation center building where today we have a history of registering 96 startups. Few of our startups have done very well. 6 of them have got good funding. The largest funding that any startup has got here is of 25 crores. So I think there are some promising startups which we will be rolling out in future as well. And God willing, we will be able to have the first unicorn coming out from MNIT few years down the line, with support of our alumni, with support of our faculty members, with support of and mentoring from our chairman, Dr. Tyagi sir. With this, I would full stop to my brief introduction about mechanical department, MIIC, and once again welcoming each and everybody who's attending this event today. I hand it over back to Dr. Moni. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our director, Sir Professor A.T.S. Rathod, a good friend and a long-time colleague of Professor Bharadwaj, to share his thoughts.
Honorable Chairperson, Dr. R.K. Tyagi ji, guest speaker of today, Ashok Belani ji, and friends, colleagues, students who are all present in virtual mode. Thank you very much for joining us today for this third Professor Avdesh Bharadwaj Memorial Lecture. Before the commencement of this lecture, I would pay my humble tribute to late Professor Avdesh Bharadwaj. Professor Avdesh Bharadwaj built foundation of incubation center here, and he provided us with an ambitious platform to pursue our goals of entrepreneurship. I mean, all throughout my association with him, lasting some 30 odd years, as Professor Jyotirmay said, I never saw him angry. He was always smiling and a very comforting person to be in company with. He has worked so much for the institute, for the department, and for all of us who worked along with him. It's very difficult to believe that he is no more with us. His spirit is continuously guiding us, but Avdesh ji, we deeply miss you. Chairperson, sir, thank you so much to spare your valuable time to be with us today. Your guidance and blessings unite us and our constant efforts to strengthen MNIT. I have known Belani Saab for last 42 years. He is our star alumnus. He is also a graduate from Wharton Business School. And people in industry, they call him a turnaround specialist. In his last assignment as Group President and Managing Director of Valeo, in a span of 6 years, from a -8% of EBIT, he took the firm, took the company to +8% EBIT, and increased the turnover by 5-fold, and that too in a span of only 6 years. He did the same thing with his earlier assignment as CEO of Tata Johnson. Belani Saab, thank you very much to be with us today. I know each one of us is eagerly waiting to hear from you. And once again, thank you, sir, to be here in this program today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our Honorable Chairman, Sir Dr. R.K. Tyagi, former Chairman cum Managing Director, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, and Honorary President, Center for India Progressing, New Delhi. I request you, sir, to address the gathering.
Our speaker of the day, Shri Ashok Belani ji, the star alumnus, turnaround specialist. And when someone tells me that you increase the turnover by 5-fold in just 6 years, it is something, like you are reading some magic stories kind of thing. So it is great interacting with you. And Shri Ajay Rathore ji, our Director in Charge MNIT, Professor Lal
Thank you, sir.
and A.K. Vyas ji, Monica Sharma ji, the Head of Department of Management Studies, all friends and relatives of late Professor Avdesh Bhardwaj ji, and dear friends. Glad to be here today to see Department of Mechanical Engineering, Department of Management Studies, and MNIT Innovation and Incubation Center coming together in association with Professor Avdesh Bhardwaj Educational Society in organizing this third Professor Avdesh Bhardwaj Memorial Lecture. And I'm very happy to know that first 2 lectures were also delivered by very eminent faculties on Industry 4.0 and also employment prospects for engineers in petroleum sector. And today we are having a lecture by an industry specialist, Mr. Ashok Belani, on changing face of Indian automotive. And a great part of this lecture is that he is one of the star alumni and also a professional of great repute. And it's not every day that we listen to the speakers of your esteemed Belani ji. So a very, very warm welcome to you. And regarding Professor Avdesh Bhardwaj ji, as people tell me, a great motivator, innovator, and multifaceted, smiling personality. And that day, Monica ji was telling me that anyone who has come in the contact with Professor Avdesh Bhardwaj ji will cherish very high regard and memories about him. And it is glad that this educational society, which had been formed under his name, is doing a great service by providing grocery and clothing to the needy ones, organizing these kind of lectures, and also promoting the cause of entrepreneurship in Rajasthan. He has made a lot of significant contributions for the growth of MNIT. MNIT, dear friends, I am I feel very proud to say that I am associated with MNIT, and it's a great institution. 35th NIRF ranking, 17th India Today ranking in engineering institutions in the country, and Ministry of Education placing a great faith in MNIT by giving responsibility of entire CSAB, CCMT, CCMN, DASA for all the 31 NITs, 26 IIITs, and 29 GSTIs. It speaks about the great potential of MNIT. I was basically just few days back on 15th of convocation, 11th October, I was in MNIT Jaipur, where we handed over more than 2,000 degrees to the graduating students. And I was so happy to see the teamwork and enthusiasm which the faculty had in delivering, not only making the engineers, but also contributing to the cause of R&D, the technology management, and also inter-institutional developing and learning mechanism. So MNIT really is doing great. And it was a particular pleasure in interaction with Mr. Ajay Rathore. And let me tell you, Mr. Ajay Rathore is a person who is wholeheartedly for the alumni cause. In the morning, like when I was discussing with Mr. Lav Bhargava, he told me that we have 25,000 alumni strength, Belani. And assuming a career average of 25 years, that means we have 25,000 into 25, that is about 6 lakh plus man years of industry experience and wisdom in our alumni. And now, basically, it will be resting with people like Mr. Ajay Rathore to make use of this industry experience for the growth of country and also for the growth of MNIT. Ajay ji is having very good plans for related with alumni cause. Like number one, what we were discussing is that since the technologies are changing very fast, every year some online course of 3 days duration for all alumni, where MNIT speaks about the various trends, the various theories, and various technologies which are coming up. And in that, we also invite people like Mr. Ashok Belani, who come and interact with the alumni and give them updates as to what are the things which are changing. And also, Mr. Rathore is working on a concept of starting the awards for alumni again. I think it was some 10 years back when we stopped giving these awards. And now he is again revitalizing it and developing the awards for distinguished alumni, outstanding service awards, and the young alumni awards, etc. And as I understand, Ajay Rathore, our target is 25th of December. When
That's true, sir. That is true, sir. We'll do it. With your guidance and blessing, we'll do it.
That will be a very good gesture, and that inspires and motivates our alumni to really contribute to the cause of MNIT and for the cause of the country. And since Belani ji will be talking about the changing faces, Belani ji, I am fascinated the way the education is changing today. In fact, there are some 4 very clearly emerging trends, like technical education and research, which was to take place in next 10 years, has taken place in last 1 year, and it is irreversible. And now people are not just talking of the degrees, they are talking of lifelong learnings. And I am told that this year, the Harvard Business School will be giving more degrees on online, in fact on online teaching, than the brick and mortar degrees. That means the trend will be that slowly and slowly the online classes and degrees will be coming more and more. And another challenge which has come across to institutions like MNIT and also to the teaching fraternity is the new education policy, where the aim is that India should emerge as a Vishwaguru and should set the world standards. In fact, when we talk of NEP, I'll discuss it for a few minutes because this is where basically our future will lie. When we talk of NEP, then we talk of some 33 crore students and 1.1 crore teachers on which this NEP is focusing. And it also focuses on 7,000 plus engineering colleges, which basically induct 21 lakh students in intake every year. And also basically how the IITs, NITs and triple ITs will be changing. And NEP is also laying the foundation for education 4.0, where the concepts artificial intelligence, machine learning, virtual reality, etc. are being introduced. Belani, we have basically two challenges emerging out to us as a country. Number one is when we talk of top 200 QS ranking institution universities, we in India have only 3 institutions. But if we go with the population of that, we are 17.7% of the world population, then at least 35 of our universities should be forming the part of this 200 QS ranking universities. That is basically one challenge which is emerging for institutions like MNIT. And another thing is when it comes to writing the scientific papers, we are the third largest in the world whose professors contribute to some 5.13% of the research papers of the entire world. A very impressive number. But the unfortunate part for us in the institution is that 70% of the research, it takes birth in the libraries and dies in the libraries. When it comes to the conversion of these research papers into the patents or industry models, then our success ratio is very less. So maybe with the help of alumni like you, we will be able to improve upon these kind of performance parameters on patents, innovations, and product developments. The world, of course, is changing very, very fast. And during convocation also, when I was talking to the graduating students, I told them that Michio Kaku, the leading technology forecaster of the world, 5 years back, he was just wondering. He said, internet is there, the technology is there, everything is there. Why still the people are going to the offices? Why is it that the malls are still full? Why is it that people are still going to the hospitals? And we are just wondering that some disruption has to take place. And it came in the shape of the COVID, and exactly the same kind of things which we were expecting that happened. And Ajay Rathorji, incidentally, I happened to listen to his another talk only yesterday. And he asked him that whatever you had forecasted has come true. So what will happen next? He has to tell some very interesting things. Like what he is saying is, of course, one area is directly pertaining to Ashok Belani ji, where he told about that automobiles will become robots and robots will become automobiles with self-diagnostic, self-parking and all those kind of things, which you will be discussing in further details. Then another thing which he says is, Ajay ji, where you have to be really very careful in future, is he says that in future the students will be wearing the contact lenses and just on the blink, they will go online. That means no memorization. That means you will not have any measures to know whether he has memorized, he has understood, or he is just downloading the concepts from Google. So challenge for the teaching faculties. He says that computer chips will be costing less than a penny. They will be cheaper than even the garbage and even cheaper than the scrap papers. And he says computer chips will be everywhere and nowhere. And also it will be basically like emerging of classes like robo doctors and robo lawyers, where on the press of a button, they will be able to tell you any law pertaining to any country in any language. And another very interesting development where again institutions like MNIT will have to be very careful in monitoring is that 2 years back, scientists have been able to download and upload the memories of the brain. And that downloading and uploading really means that it will be a death of internet. And it will be something like brain net, which will be coming, where instead of zeros and ones, possibly the memories, emotions, mental dictations, they will be forming the basis of all these computations and interpretations. And also, like we engineers will have to learn the way the biotechnologies will work, like the human body shops are emerging, where body cells will be developing bones, then windpipes and all human organs, and with no fear of rejection. That means engineers will be becoming doctors and the doctors will be becoming engineers. And another interesting development which we are seeing is it says it will be the death of middleman. 30% of the businesses will close. The organizations like Amazon, Airbnb, Uber, etc. basically have grown because they have created a situation like a digitized middleman. So a lot of changes coming. And of course, like he says, automobiles will be your doctors, they will be basically our pathfinders, they will be able to enable us multitasking and all those kind of things. So to sum up, I must say, Belani, I very eagerly look forward for a lecture from you on transformations in automobile industry, because these transformations will take place not only in automobiles, but they will also take place in engineering institutions like MNITs. They will also impact a lot of learning on professionals like us. So my compliments again to MNIT, Department of Mechanical Engineering, Management, MIIC, and Avdesh Avdeshji Educational Society. Great initiative and my best wishes. And I look forward for a very interesting talk by Shri Ashok Belani ji. And I also wish that on 25th of December, when Ajay Rathore ji declares the list of that distinguished alumni, then you will be one of them with the kind of stature and contributions which you have made for MNIT. So thank you very much. Best wishes. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful address. Our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Ashok Belani, is a mechanical engineer from MRAC Jaipur 1982 batch. Mr. Belani graduated from the Advanced Management Program of the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, batch of 2006. Coming from a mechanical engineering background, he started his automotive journey career in 1998 with Tata Autocom Systems Limited. He has spent 15 years across multiple Tata subsidiaries in various roles, including building the overseas business for TACO. Moving from his position as CEO of Tata Johnson's Control, Mr. Belani joined as Managing Director of Value India. He has been instrumental in building Value as a leader in the auto component space in India and Asia. Before joining Value, Mr. Belani served as CEO of various Tata Group companies like Tata Johnson Controls, Tata Autocom Systems Interior and Plastic Division, Tata Autocom Systems Composites Division, and Executive Vice President Overseas Business of Tata Autocom Systems. Mr. Belani has an uncompromising commitment towards ethical behavior, safety, corporate governance, social responsibility, and hard work. His values-based approach, combined with his forward-looking vision, comprehensive planning, and the thorough execution of the team behind him, has held him in good stead in the corporate life. We welcome you, sir. I request our eminent speaker, Mr. Ashok Belani, to kindly deliver the invited lecture on the topic, Changing Face of Indian Automotive Industry.
Thank you, Monika ji. Thank you, Chairman Dr. Tyagi, for your kind and generous words, as well as your time today to be part of this session. Thank you, Professor Rathore, for giving me this opportunity, which is a matter of immense pride as well as privilege for me, being part of this great institute, and having this opportunity really swells my chest when I really share this event with my friends, family, and other members. So thank you all for your very kind and generous words. What I am going to do is I'm going to probably share what probably I've seen happening in the auto industry for last 22 years that I've been associated with it. I think moment when we talk of cars, automotive industry, I think what fancies us the most is the thrill, the speed, the acceleration from 0 to 5 seconds getting into 100 kilometers, or the sleek looking cars, or the fancy interiors, and all those kind of things. So there is a certain element of glamour associated with automobile industry. Although this is a sunrise industry, which really indicates to some extent the health of the economy as well, that how well the economy is doing. It's an early indicator for that. But nevertheless, in this next 40-45 minutes, what I'm going to share with you is some lesser known details of this auto industry and how they are going to influence us and impact us, or rather already impacting us to some extent, and how they are going to impact us in the days to come. Now, I just want to add a little caveat here that, I'm not able to run the presentation live, so I would depend on MNIT teams to move the slides, and I would do it at my end. Probably the synchronization we'll try and do in a very seamless manner. So I think just a sec. I'm on my screen, and we move to slide 2, which is already there, on the screen. Now, as a preamble to this presentation, what I want to share with you that, as it was told, that I started my automotive career in '98, and I ended my career by superannuating in 2020. All these 2 years, even at the beginning of my career and even at the end of the career, there was one thing which was very constant. That constant thing was that there were always too much pressures, too much cost pressures in this business. And all through this journey of 22 years, there was no year where we were not under the cost pressures and trying to do improvisation, trying to increase the utilization of our assets, trying to bring more efficiencies in our processes so that we are competitive. Now, if we take a little bit, a 10,000 or 20,000 feet view of this industry globally, I want to share that globally today, the installed manufacturing capacity in the automotive industry is for something like 120 million vehicles. And as it stands, the brains of the industry or the thinkers of the industry forecast that this year, the demand is going to be there anywhere between 81 to 85 million vehicles for this year, which means that there is an excess capacity in this industry, which is continuously being augmented also vis-a-vis the demand. So the capacity is much ahead of the demand, and demand is trying to catch up. In other words, if you see if these numbers are to be correct, and which I think probably are very correct, there's a utilization of only 65% of the installed capacity in the industry globally. So consequently, I mean, this is a very capital intensive industry. There are huge investments in that. And if you have something like 35% of unutilized capacity, to my mind, this is criminal. And this is the reason that when you go and buy a car and enter into a showroom, the sales guys over there do everything possible to make sure that you come out with their car only and do not go to the adjacent showroom. So I've seen that this is one constant thing which keeps challenging the industry, which breeds innovation. And it has also given, world-class manufacturing processes like Toyota manufacturing system or TPS and such kind of a great, innovations in the process industry, so that there is a high level of utilization as well as a good amount of efficiency. Having said that, I still want to tell you the 3 distinct things which I notice in this industry. This industry works with scale of economy. And if it is not there, then you really struggle in this business. You got to have a cutting edge technology, and the cutting edge technology has a shelf life of certain years only, because in the long run, everything becomes a commodity only. But you've got to be ahead in the game in this by innovating new technologies. And third is, in this business, you've got to have deep pockets. I think unless the deep pockets are there, it will be very difficult to really survive. Just want to share with you that if any OEM starts a new company or a new factory, it takes him at least 5 to 6 years to break even before he makes any penny of profit. So these are the three characteristics of this industry, which is scale of economy, technology, deep pockets. And this is very much required to really be a winner in this game and be a player of any cognizance worth mentioning. I would like to move to the next slide, which is about the Indian automotive industry, slide 4. And in this industry, what I'm attempting to give you is some dimensional aspect of Indian automotive industry particularly. Perhaps it might be known, but few things may, for those colleagues who are not aware, that we are the world's 7th largest commercial vehicle manufacturing country, I would say. We are the 5th largest as far as the heavy truck manufacturing is concerned. We are world's 4th largest passenger vehicle manufacturing company. And of course, we are the world's the largest two-wheeler company, besides being the largest agri-tractor manufacturing company. We leave behind guys like John Deere or Case New Holland in terms of numbers. And I hope you're not surprised when I tell you that the Mahindra is world's largest tractor manufacturing company. This industry contributes almost 7% of its revenue, which is equivalent to India's 22% manufacturing GDP and 7% of the overall GDP of the country. It gives employment to a lot of people like me. Almost 32 million people are employed by this industry, both direct and indirect. When I say direct and indirect, it includes the suppliers also in this industry, besides the OEM like Toyota or Tata Motors or something like that. In year 2019, we produced 28.6 million vehicles in total, of which 4.2 million vehicles were light vehicles. And in fact, 3.6 million vehicles were the passenger vehicles, which were produced in this industry. Now, the question would be that we are talking in 2021, and why am I talking of 2019 numbers? Well, my view on this is that as far as automotive is concerned, 2020 and 21 were kind of I would say, aberrations in the history of global automotive industry and Indian automotive industry. And if we take those numbers of 20 and 21, probably the picture may be deceptive and may adversely impact the future years to come. So, which is why I'm in a mature year like 2019, I've kept as the basis to really share with you these dimensional aspects of this industry. Now, this huge pie, which we are talking of so many million vehicles, we'll see in the next slide, which is slide 5, how this is segmented. What we produce 77% of two-wheelers. We produce 15% of the light vehicles, which are largely passenger, and some of them are for commercial purpose also. 4% of the three-wheelers, and 3% of tractors, and 1% of medium and heavy commercial vehicles. But this size, this pie is enjoyed by, I would say, as far as light and heavy commercial vehicles are concerned, is enjoyed by 11 players, of which there is a combination of global as well as Indian players. 10 players in tractors, 7 players in three-wheelers, 19 in passenger vehicle, and 12 in two-wheelers. Almost everybody of any remote significance also is operating into this market. And for a moment, I think we can park the question of Ford and General Motors for a little later, or maybe if anybody has a question, I can attempt to answer. but everybody of any cognizance has been in this game in India, trying to get, the size of the pie in their favor compared to their peers. I would request if we move to slide number 6. Now, slide number 6, it's a little crowded slide, but I think it makes a very important point. And I find this is something very peculiar, or to some extent, I may say that unique of Indian market. Let's say passenger cars. There are 19 players operating in this arena, but the bulk of the share, which is 70% or more, is only enjoyed by the top 3 players. The rest all are in the chiller game. You see, even Toyota, which is such a global giant, is having a market share of 4%, 3%. Volkswagen, which is the number 1 company in the world, if you club all their brands, they don't even have any, significant share to worth mentioning of. And this phenomena cuts across, I would say, all the, segments of the industry, whether it is a commercial vehicle, whether it is a tractor. Commercial vehicle is dominated still by Tata Motors, Mahindra, and Ashok Leyland. And you'll be surprised that Mahindra has got larger numbers than the Ashok Leyland, because it includes some light commercial vehicles also, like Maximo, which is used for intercity travel and all that, which gets factored into this. Similarly, tractor is dominated by Mahindra, TAFE, and Sonalika. Similarly, three-wheelers is dominated by Bajaj, Piaggio, and TVS. And the phenomena continues for the, two-wheelers also between Hero, Honda, and Bajaj. And this is very peculiar, These 3 guys are always dominating this market and would continue to do so, leaving the rest of the market to some 10 or 12 guys to really fight it out and see what they can make sense about it. Now, these were the dimensional aspects which I just wanted to share to set the perspective. And before we really come to the Indian part, I would just like to spend some time between us, to share with you that what is happening globally, what are the kind of challenges, and in which direction the technology is moving to somehow address those challenges. And we would move to slide 7 or 8. Now, if I talk about here about the concerns about environment and pollutions, there's nothing new I'm going to really talk. This is a concern across the world, across the globe. And some of automobiles have this stigma that they are one of the largest polluters of CO2 and NOx level in the environment. So what happened is a few years back, some globally, while I must say that while governments of the nations are doing their bit, the sovereign governments are working out the policy frameworks and guidelines to really control the pollution. States are playing their role across the world and in India also to really see that how they promote greener fuels and greener vehicles. But now the matter has been taken by the cities also in their hands. The city mayors are controlling the things for their sphere of influences, the geography which is under their control. And few years back, a consortium of C40 cities was formed to provide the climate leadership between these cities. Today, although it is named as still C40 cities, but it has expanded to 90 odd mega cities across the world. And if we really add up to the population of these cities which are member of C40 group, it almost contributes, 650 odd million people in this group, which really combined, if the GDP coming from these cities is almost 25%. So you see that the kind of a muscle which is being developed to really address the concerns of the pollution. And not only that, I think recently the European Union has drawn a plan which is called as FIT 55, FIT 55, and they are committed to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by almost 55% by offering 55% by 2030 by encouraging the environmental friendly vehicles and giving a lot of subsidy and benefits for the electrical vehicles in their cities. Cities are doing, apart from giving these economic support and all, they are doing their other bit also in offering alternate mobility solutions, not only the cars. Because of my assignment, I had to travel to Paris very frequently, and I used to see very, I would say, rich and very well-doing people coming on bicycles. They also used to come to work on those typical tricycles. I don't know what exact word is there, which has got a very flat board and two wheels where you slide through one leg and then jump on the other leg and drive down. I used to see many cycles which were single wheeled, and people with their bag and backpack on their shoulders used to drive to the work and all that. So there's a lot of alternate mobility solutions were also being worked out. And in fact, Paris alone is spending not less than $300 million to convert 50 kilometers of the car lanes into the bike lanes to encourage the driving of the bikes and using those strips for the alternate mobility and all that. Now, when all this is happening, the consumer behavior is also changing around the world, and they are also trying to really adopt to these changes and all that. We have heard on and off in the newspapers that so-and-so country has declared, Norway being the leader, that the IC engines will be totally abolished or closed down by 2030. Some says by 2035, some says by 2040. So everybody has their own timeline to really get rid of the IC engines. But let me also share with you that a lot of cities, and let's go to slide number 9, that a lot of cities have committed that they have signed a declaration that they want to bar the diesel vehicles by 2025. And whether this is going to happen or not, probably they are more serious in Europe than what we are in India. Although some of the cities in India are also signatories to this fact. For instance, Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi NCR, Jaipur, Mumbai are signatories to this, that they want to ban ban diesel engines, although they have not been very explicit on the time frame of it. But diesel is becoming a kind of a villain in the whole piece of the environmental pollution that is coming. And it has attained a lot of negativity, which I would share in the next slide, which is slide number 10. And let's move to that. Now, see, we all read and tried to go deeper into it also to understand that in 2015, if you remember, and if I'm not wrong, it was a time frame of September 2015 when the Dieselgate scandal broke out, when it turned out that the Volkswagen, the prestigious German manufacturer and the largest vehicle manufacturer in the world, who keeps beating Toyota also in the numbers, had equipped millions of diesel cars with a software that made them appear that diesel cars with this software are appearing cleaner during the emission test. And thereafter, a lot of hue and cry was there. Drivers also argued that they had suffered damages because of the emitting pollution coming. You would have read that a lot of cases got filed up in United States, and a few people were prosecuted and convicted. And Volkswagen was compelled to cough out a couple of $1 billion to really address the penalties which were there, which were levied by them, by the United States government and the Congress over there. All this has led to a terrible loss of credibility between the OEM. And when I use the word OEM, what I mean is the vehicle manufacturer or the car manufacturer. So there's a loss of trust deficit is there between the OEMs and the users thereafter this incident, particularly on the diesel cars. Okay, diesel has now become a piece of villain, and people are abandoning diesel vehicles. Okay, although there is a parallel theory which Bosch keeps arguing that diesel is more friendly than gasoline, but there are not many buyers for that. Consequent to this, governments are doing a lot of measures across the world to really set the target for car manufacturing companies arising out of this experience. Indian government also has really defined, and they have defined that by 2027, I think our engines which will be produced in India should have a CO2 emission of almost 95 grams per kilometer kind of a thing, which is a hell of a task. And the industry is still yielding out of the burden of implementing Euro 6 by jumping Euro 5 straight away from Euro 4. So governments are also toughening their stance, but nevertheless, the industries are also responding. I would move to slide number 11 to take you through. In Europe, particularly after Dieselgate, where once diesel used to command a market share of 58%, it has fallen 45% in 17-18, and thereafter it is falling further in favor of gasoline and the alternate fuel which is there. Now, this is the kind of a scenario which is happening in the automotive industry, and let's attempt together to really understand that what is happening. Consequent to this, we'll move to slide 12. And here I'm trying to really share with you that CO2 emission reduction is really driving the whole game. People are working in manufacturing more and more cleaner engines, reducing the CO2 levels. This is giving push to electrification also. And there are certain norms, CAFE norms, which will come in India in 22, 23. But in Europe, those norms are there where there are huge penalties on the OEMs or the car makers to quickly move towards electrification and all that. And there are even, other, I would say, systems being touched like transmission and automation system, where people are moving more and more towards automatic cars and having start-stop function, so that in a crowded area or in a signal area, the car stops for it. So your combustion stops, you don't burn the fuel and don't emit the fuel. And even auxiliaries, I would say, for example, let's instance take this vehicle lighting system. What used to be the halogen bulbs and all are moving to LED, because LED consumes lesser power than the halogen, this thing. Since it's a lesser power coming from battery charging would reduce and the engine will operate for a lesser time when it is on the LED light systems. So every possible thing is being done to really see that even if some milligrams of emission also can be reduced, and there's a lot of consciousness in the I would say developed nations, which is percolating to our country also, which we would be discussing in little more depth in the slides to come. I would move to slide 13. Now, with this kind of environment in the world, more so in the developed nations, I see there are three revolutions which are happening across the globe. First revolution, we all know, is electrification. And there's a lot of buzz and noise in our own country also. But my views are slightly, not entirely diametrically different, but slightly different than what is happening in the developed world. And we would discuss that. The world is moving, as far as the cars are concerned, towards digital mobility, connected cars. And since there is a lot of scarcity of drivers in the developed nations and they're pretty expensive, if you are having a driver over there, then you are somebody in the society. And I'm sure there are quite a few $1 million or euros in your saving bank account also. So the cars are becoming autonomous cars. And there are a lot of people who are working on that, OEMs, as well as the tier ones, like the companies where I had worked. And I just want to share with you the company, my last company, Valeo, which is a French company. They developed an autonomous car sometime in 2015, which went around the Paris city a couple of times without any accident. Thereafter, the geography got extended to France. And the effort was to really see the reliability of the vehicle by running thousands of kilometers to see if any glitches are there and overcome them. And this car is still running somewhere in Europe as we speak. So these are the three revolutions which are going to shape up the developed world automobile industry, and how this is going to reflect on us and how it's going to impact on us. We would talk in the next slide, which is slide moving to 14 and then 15. Now, before I really get into the depth of the matter and share my thoughts with you over here, what I want to show you that Indian automobile sale or the production has been a good story. If you would see that in 2018, we did something like 4.7 million vehicles. When it comes to 2019, we saw a dip of 4.7 to becoming 4.2 million vehicles. And that is the time you would recollect that post demonetization, the effects of slowing economy were more visible. And I think in that year, our GDP also came around 5 or something like that. And then we were struck by this lockdowns, closures, and in 2020, which partly continued in 2021 also. So 2020, the sale dropped to 2.8 million. And by talking to various experts, reading some mails and reading some communications, reading some articles, looking at the forecast which are being done by experts like LMC, talking to some of the OEMs, I see that by March 2022, we should be back in the game of growth, and we should register a growth which should quantify into 3.7 million vehicles. And then again gradually take off from there for a growth of 7% on a CAGR basis between 22 and 25, and then move towards more accelerated growth thereafter. Mind you, this green line is a crystal ball gazing. Nobody knows for sure what's going to happen, but based on the facts, data, and understanding available at this point of time, this is, I would not say my best, but my most rational assessment at this point of time. Now, sharing the picture with you, if this growth is going to grow, or maybe it's going to unleash the conservatism that I have built in this growth, then this growth is not going to come in isolation of the challenges. It's not going to be a smooth sailing. Today, even to reach 3.7 million vehicles, you see, every commodity is shooting out of the roof, whether it's aluminum, whether it is copper, whether it is steel. It's the scarcity which is really, really hitting very hard. Crude is showing a sign of hovering around 80, 85, which has a direct impact on the polymers like PP, PAC, and all those kind of things, which are becoming very expensive. And their availability also is a challenge, and not to talk much about the scarcity caused by the semiconductors across the world. But nevertheless, this is, as I said, is my conservatism. And other than these momentary challenges, let's see what are the inherent challenges which we see in the days to come. I am on slide number 17. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that still we have a very growing population, although the population is deaccelerating, but definitely year on year, we are registering growth. And this growth is resulting in a lot of urbanization, where people are still moving towards larger cities in the hope of getting brighter future, in the hope of getting lucrative jobs and all that. And this trend of urbanization is going to continue for a while. Should this continue, there's no stopping. I think there will be more vehicles or vehicle growth on the roads also, which is very inevitable. Now, if this status continues and it goes that way, the mobility problems are going to further intensify. We have seen it as population moves, as grows, as GDP grows. There's an increased car ownership, which fuels the aspirations because of the, I would say, higher disposable income these days, with youngsters, with IT jobs, and with very, startups and all those kind of things. So to meet those aspirations, there's bound to be the increased car ownership, which we are going to see. And if the cars are going to increase, there is going to be more fuel consumption, more mileages being traveled. And possibly in this arena, what's going to happen is that there are going to be, the environment is going to unleash some dazzling series of innovations, which are designed towards new things, which are designed more keeping in focus the urban roads, such as mobility as a service, which we are watching through Uber, Ola, Meru, and others. There are going to be advanced traffic management systems. And I really want to share with you, Pune city, one day in some kind of urgency, I might have jumped a signal. And within few hours, a picture of my jumping the signal with my car plate number was in my mobile phone. And I was asked to, pay a penalty of 500 rupees, which I did. But that has thereafter injected a sense of responsibility more and more on me, because of these systems getting introduced. And I see that everywhere you go, parking systems are being designed, new freight sharing solutions are coming into existence, and new concepts of transportations, particularly, two-wheeler and three-wheeler is going to emerge further. And we'll really go through them in a little more length as we go along. But for the time being, I would like to move to slide number 18. Now, what we have seen is we have a growing population, which is resulting in urbanization, and the urbanization is going to lead to the vehicle growth. But what are the challenges? We have a very high degree of accidents on our road. Consequently, the fatalities. Each one of us suffers through heavy congestion wherever we go in cities, from point A to B, and you have to really plan it. What time of the hour you are leaving, what time would be the best to really cover that distance. Consult Mr. Google and plan your journey. And when the congestion is there, when the cars are going to be there, pollution is a serious issue for our country, more so compared to any other nation, I would say. Please move to slide number 19. And what I really want to share with you, perhaps you know that every year we see 500,000 road accidents every year on Indian roads. Of this, there are 150,000 casualties. We lose 150,000 lives every year on the roads. While Mr. Gadkari is very proud of the fact that, before he took over, Indian roads were we were laying something like 9 to 11 kilometers of highways every day, which has now jumped to something like 43, 44, 45 kilometers a day, which is very appreciable. But I must really salute Mr. Gadkari also, who's equally candid in admitting that he did not succeed despite his best efforts in reducing these accidents, which lead to losing of these lives. And losing of this life doesn't mean, it's in isolation. It really means it's definitely a big public health issue, but it's also an economic one also. And I think we shave off a couple of fractions of points in our GDP because of these accidents. Similarly, congestion, which is a very serious problem that we have, someone has really estimated that in 4 metros alone, or 4 big cities alone, we have an estimated loss of $22 billion because of the congestion and the consequential impacts because of that. And if you were to go in the normal times from point A to point B, it may take you almost 2.5 times more when you go in the peak hours. That is the pathetic state that we are in. I remember a couple of years we all had read in newspaper that in Gurugram, there was a heavy congestion happened where people probably had to, people were stuck for hours together and probably throughout the night also. So it's a very, very serious kind of a problem that we have. And all this throws us towards, having a dubious distinction that 14 of our Indian cities figure among the 20 most polluted cities in the world. Similarly, in congestion, our 4 cities have the dubious distinction to appear in the top 10 congested cities in the world. And this, though I said dubious distinction, but then this is shared by Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and Pune, from where I'm speaking. It's really terrible situation. And technology is moving in this direction to really see how we can address some of these issues. We'll move to slide 20. Now, similar to the rest of the world, diesel has become also very bad fuel in India. It is becoming a very negative fuel. There was a time in 2012 and 13 where there was a price disparity of almost 25 rupees in favor of diesel per liter. Since 2017-18 and till today, this disparity has narrowed down to 9 and 10 rupees. And when you work out the total cost of ownership, it really doesn't really give you the advantage which diesel otherwise used to give. The fact remains that the diesel cars, like-to-like basis, are more expensive than the gasoline cars. And As a result, diesel is less preferred car as of today. And this year, I think the share of diesel has fallen only to 17%, which used to be at one point of time something like 51% and 47% and all. It has got reduced to 17% now. And the gain goes to gasoline and alternate fuels also, like CNG. Maruti cars running on the CNG, particularly the taxi segment, and some private segments or owners also have moved to CNG cars as a safer fuel or as a more environmental friendly fuel. I would request if we move to slide number 21 as of now. Now, we spoke about accidents, we spoke about congestion, we spoke about pollution. How are these things getting addressed? Now, I very firmly believe that COVID is aberration. The scientists, the doctors, and recently Mr. Guleria also said that February 2022, I think life should become normal, very similar to the pre-COVID days. Lot of us in India own car, but much more of us are not able to afford car, or do not want to have a car because of the problems that we have associated with the parking and the pollutions and the congestions. So I still believe that shared mobility has still a big future. The ride-hailing companies have done their bit and they are continuously doing bit to make you travel safely in the shared mobility environment by regularly sanitizing it and taking further steps. So I feel that shared mobility is still going to play a much bigger role in the days to come. There would be, now I want to really take a discussion slightly away. Like I said before, that governments, states, and cities are doing their bit to really see that electrification gets pushed. But Government of India is thinking very differently, and I really admire them for that. They are not being prescriptive at all कि आप electrification पे जाइए, although they are giving some kind of a benefit, subsidies, and all those kind of things. They have very clearly defined for the car makers that year on year, these are the emission norms which need to be adhered when you make vehicle, and those would get certified by ARI before the vehicle is homologated to drive on the Indian roads. Now, how you achieve these targets, that is your issue. You are free to do whichever it is. You want to go for mild hybrid, go for it. You want to go for full hybrid, go for it. You want to go for environmental friendly fuels like CNG, go for it. You want LPG, go for it. You want to go for ethanol, go for it. You want to go for electrification, you go for electrification. So they have defined a framework of green mobility rather than electrification. And they are promoting through the policy framework more and more greener vehicles in India. And that is the reason you would appreciate that Maruti is still not very gung-ho on the hybrid vehicles as much it is more on CNG and these kind of vehicles or mild hybrid. Because the moment you go for hybrid, you are paying for two powertrains. One is a motor and the other is the IC engine. Can really be, there'll be a point, today probably the affordability will be an issue, but there'll be a point where everything will get absorbed and with the increased disposable income. There was a stage, we all know, that people were preferring to buy car without an AC and get the AC retrofitted cheaply. But today there is no car which is sold without AC. Everybody wants to buy AC and AC has got absorbed. So the automakers are developing technologies to support these new concepts of green mobility, connected vehicles, and autonomous and shared mobility. Now, when I use the word autonomous, it's not a driverless car which would come in, India. I think, again, I would quote Mr. Gadkari. He was very adamant to the fact that, he doesn't want, autonomous car or driverless cars to come to India. Yes, he's very sure, he's very right, because if the autonomous car comes and they are affordable, we would have a huge problem on the hand on the employment as far as the drivers are concerned. Not only in India, we will have to also, accept and, what do I say, probably will have to take care of our countrymen who are driving vehicles in countries like UAE, Dubai and all that, because they will also become jobless. So what's going to happen is, in my view, that autonomous vehicles will be very differently defined. You would have some functions which are autonomous, and they would assist the driver rather than totally driving the car. For instance, autonomous electric brake. What will happen is you will have a front camera on your car, and let us say that you're driving on some street or something, and it's possible in India that a goat comes or a cow comes in front of you after a few hundred yards or whatever it is. So the camera is going to take the picture. This picture would in nanoseconds would be sent to the cloud, which would be managed by the car company. That cloud would have a library of photos and try to match, okay, what is this thing which is likely to come in front of the car. And a quick assessment would be made and a signal will be sent to your car, to either slow down or apply the brake when you're driving and keep you safe. Or, already I think MG Rover or Volkswagen or somebody have started offering collision avoidance features, or lane departure warning systems, or parking assist. Now, in Europe, there are Car and Valuers, one of the company who has developed it, that when you go to a restaurant, just get down in the portico, just give a signal to your mobile phone by pressing something, and the car, with the help of radars or lidars or scanners or the ultrasonic sensors which are there, will go and find a parking place in the parking lot. And whether it is a parallel parking or a horizontal parking, it would be smart enough to go and park itself. And when you have finished your nice dinner or a lunch, you can call the car to the portico and it will drive automatically itself. This may take time. It will happen one day. You cannot stop the technology. And today the world is barrierless. It's going to happen. But I think it would be a while by the time it happens in India. And I don't see this happening for another 5 to 7 years. Everything, in India gets very accepted. I'll give a very simpler example. Few years back, when I used to travel, I used to see the blinkers on the outside rear view mirror systems. And they used to blink and all that. And hamari gaadi mein to kuch hota hi nahi tha aisa. But very soon, even if they were expensive and they were meant for BMWs and Mercedes, they got adopted for the Indian markets. And even now a B car or B segment car, which is a typical hatchback, comes with this kind of a blinker system available over there. We have the scale of economy, and scale of economy is going to play the role in customizing these systems and making it more affordable for our users. So, as I said that before, that the real value of these drivers will be in providing, say, input to the driver. When we talk of connected and safer cars, the driver behavior, how is he driving, the information on route congestion would be available. The information on fuel consumption would be available through the connected cars. Today, when the fuel level drops down, my car is asking the option that which petrol pump can I take you? Can I navigate you to so-and-so petrol pump? And if I press a particular petrol pump of a Shell or a Bharat or something, then it takes me to the nearest dealer for the fueling. So all these kind of features are going to grow more and more. Infotainment and all is going to come. And connectivity, I would say particularly, is going to be very beneficial for the fleet management. And it is, maybe in the personal vehicles, some of these features may initially be available for niche vehicles, but eventually they are going to improve the affordability and will get into, all the cars, so that these problems of accidents, pollutions and congestions get resolved in our driving experience. We would now move to slide number 27. I think this is a broadly repeat of what I said, but what we are seeing is there's a lot of buzz happening in last particularly 4 or 5 months, ever since I would say the curbs of COVID-19 were getting lifted. We are talking of e-mobility. Now, I still see e-mobility as a distant possibility when it comes to four-wheeler. Two-wheelers and three-wheelers are the really early candidates. The reason being that when you compare the total cost of ownership of a IC engine two-wheeler or a three-wheeler, which means cost of the vehicle, which means fuel required for running it for 5 years, which means insurance, road tax, blah, 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 whatever it comes. I think the e-scooters or e-two-wheelers or e-auto rickshaws have reached a parity level. They have crossed the inflection point in some cases, and they are a little cheaper than the IC engines also. So these are our early candidates. Here, since they would be driven in the cities, the concern of range anxiety is not going to be so much, because you're not going to drive a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler from Pune to Mumbai, say 140 kilometers or something like that. You're going to drive at the end of the day in cities something like 30, 45, 50 kilometers at best. Charging is going to be simple. You know, you can probably charge it at your home. Otherwise, for the commercial ones also, now the concept of swapping the battery is taking place. You just give an uncharged battery the way you give a empty gas LPG cylinder to your homecoming hawker and take a filled one. Same way the battery swapping is happening. So two-wheelers and three-wheelers will attain a good amount of maturity. And I really see that by 27, 28, maybe 100% of two-wheelers and three-wheelers may move to electrification. And probably by that time, the battery cost in terms of kilowatt hours is going to come down, and the affordability improves for four-wheelers, and we reach an inflection point where it makes sense for us to buy four-wheeler car which is electric. Of course, Tata Motors is succeeding with Nexon and all, but mind you, I shouldn't be saying this, but nevertheless, I must tell you that recently you saw that $1 billion was pledged by a fund to invest into the e-mobility side of Tata Motors, and suddenly their share price shot up. But on this electric cars, they have not made one single rupee as a profit. Okay, they are running as losses. They want to capture the market and then move forward to better days, hoping that the cost factors which are there would come in control. So I still feel introduction at a fairly good scales, let's say 30% of vehicles being electric, could be 2030 or onwards period, I would say. These are the big technological changes which I really see happening, which are going to help us address some of our challenges. We would move to slide number 23 to see some more things, which are little characteristics of this industry. One is, as I said, that big three are controlling the 70% market, and this phenomena would continue. We would keep coming up with value for money solutions for the market, and people today are willing to cough up a little bit extra while buying the vehicle, if they do appreciate and realize that इसके लिए 20,000 या 30,000 देने से मुझे ये feature मिल रहा है, and they see a return for value for money. I think this trend will continue. Because of our policy framework, bulk of the market is still going to be less than 4-meter car. As far as the distance of the wheelbase is concerned, we would not have, long cars which we see, the animal kind of things which we see in the United States. We are going to be away from that. Cars which are designed exclusive for Indian markets would be more successful. And I think Kwid, Baleno, Brezza, Triber have really set the example. They were designed, developed for Indian market. Baleno was done for Indian market, and thereafter it is being exported to Japan. This trend is going to continue. I spoke to you about two-wheelers and three-wheelers being the first candidates of electrification. We also spoke about three revolutions already. I do see that, there's a change in ownership of the model going to happen. Now, it's very ironical that this industry, which lays a lot of emphasis on asset utilization, efficiency improvements, ironically produces a vehicle which is grossly underutilized. You take your car in the morning, go to the workplace, reach there at 9 o'clock, park your car, you leave your workplace at 6 p.m. to go to home. 9 to 6, this asset for which you have spent quite a few lakh of rupees is lying idle. There's no use of it over there. It's just, getting dust and heat and exposed to, I would say, environmental corrosion or whatever you would like to call it. And then again, 6 o'clock, you pick up the car, go home, reach at 7 o'clock. And then again, from evening 7 to next day morning 8, the vehicle is lying underutilized. So this is the irony of this industry. But what I see, the way you subscribe for a magazine, that you buy a subscription and you pay for it, and whenever you want to stop the week or India Today, you can stop it and do that. Similar kind of a subscription models are coming up with these car companies. And I'm using the word car companies. I want to really caution you that these guys are, or car companies, the OEMs are now attempting to define themselves very differently. They're not calling themselves as a car company anymore, and they are trying to brand themselves as a mobility solution provider. And that is the reason you would have seen that Hyundai picked up some investment in Ola. Mahindra picked up some investment in Meru, which was a kind of I would say, a sizable stake. And similarly, other companies, including Tata Motors, also have spent in some mobility companies and startups, because they are trying to change their way of working. So I see the car subscription model will come. You want a particular brand or particular model of a car, you will go for a subscription, which means you don't have to pay upfront those 5, 10, 15, 20 lakhs and all that. The road, you don't have to get into the botherations of road tax, insurance, pollution approval and all that. You would continue to pay a fee. Okay. Let's say you took a subscription for
Ajay ji, are we still connected?
Belani Saab, can you hear us?
Yeah, the voice is reaching, but somehow I'm not able to start the audio. I hope you guys are able to have a look at me. Is it?
You're able to hear you and you can continue your presentation.
You are audible and you please continue with your presentation.
I don't know which slide we lost each other. Can Monica ji, can you share with me what was the slide number where we were there together?
Sir, I think it was 21.
27, no, 27.
So 27 or 20?
You were talking about a lot of changing trends.
Yeah. So that was slide 23,
Okay.
which had blue bubbles. Which had blue bubbles. Are we there on that?
Yes, yes, yes.
So we spoke about diesel getting dropping. I feel diesel will die down, and it would only remain for
His hotspot.
Thank you.
working in that direction. These things are going to happen. Few more things may happen also. For example, a lot of Maruti cars are with something called AMT, which is automatic manual transmission. Of course, I see slowly the end. The automobiles further in our industry. We move to slide number 24. This is just to really quickly cap that government has been very consciously giving directions to this industry and trying to see that there is a policy stability. In 2018, they introduced a policy promoting the green mobility. To improve the safety, something similar to the Euro NCAP, they introduced Bharat NCAP in 2019. They are in 2020, we saw Euro 6 came into existence, straight away jumping from Euro 4 to Euro 6, skipping Euro 5, and CAFE norms are going to be there in 2022. Already for promoting green mobility, there are benefits like FAME 2, which may expire, but I'm definite that there will be some form of FAME 2, which will find extension or probably a new label to it. This is going to be there. Scrapping of old vehicle is further going to help in reducing the pollutions in the vehicle. And these driver assistance systems are going to come more and more in this vehicle in milder forms. Now, with this, I've completed saying what I had to say, but I'm still tempted to take, a little bit more time in going to slide number 25. As I understood, there are quite a few students who are there on this call, and I'm tempted to share some thoughts, for their benefit, and thereafter end my presentation. I want you to really think about water. The water which is flowing in this picture, this is a typical characteristics of water, that it keeps flowing. When the water flows, it takes shit also along with it, and it takes flower petals also along with it. I think in life, we need to keep moving forward like water. We need to keep taking evils and goods both together with us, but keep moving forward the way water is moving forward. You will see in the second picture, I think there are some stones or rocks in the path of the water. Whether these are impediments, these are obstructions, these are some kind of hindrances. I think these things would come in life, but water finds its ways and it keeps moving forward. I think I have done this in my professional and personal life, and it has held me in good stead. Of course, we all want to grow. We want to grow rapidly like a coconut tree. But you see what tree does. tea tree does, it expects everybody to look up to it and it would look down on others. I think this would not help. We need to keep moving towards like water, keep flowing. And when water doesn't flow, and it's stagnated, only mosquitoes and disease breed. So in life, we need to move forward, keep moving like water. And I'm sure since a lot of my eminent colleagues who are going to get into the professional world, if they probably keep this in mind, things would be much better for them as they face challenges in the world outside. So thank you all. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. And I really feel once again honored and privileged to speak in front of you. And you have been a great audience. Thank you so much.
So there are a few questions. If we can quickly take them up.
Yes, sir. Shoot them. And
So
I'll
one-
do my best to answer.
So one was that rather than talking about hybrid, ethanol, hydrogen, and electric, all kinds of green mobility options, would it be better to stick to one and develop infrastructure thoroughly for it, rather than trying to develop infrastructure for so many parts in parallel? What is your take on that?
See, my take on is that we are quite rich, in other energy sources also. For example, CNG. I think this is very abundantly available. And if you really compare the operating cost of a vehicle through CNG and compared to EV today, I think there's a whole lot of a difference. Let's remember, we are a very, very cost conscious country. When I use a pen, I just do not throw the pen when the ink is over. I just hold the pen and change the refill. We are very, very cautious, and that is inbuilt. There's nothing wrong in that. I think so. This is something which government is trying to do. That या तो हम wait करें कि lithium ion mines हमको मिल जाएं. We have a huge stocks of lithium. Battery technology improves. Rather than waiting that, let's address the pollution controls with what is available. Mr. Gadkari is, I'm repeatedly using this word because I really admire the man, the way he's pushing mixing of ethanol in fuel and all that, which is available with the sugarcane industry. So, Joe available hai, why don't we really use it and make the most of it? Someday, I'm sure the battery technology will change from lithium to something else, sodium vapor or whatever it is, and the per kilowatt hour price is going to come down. And I think the other things will become more popular. So I personally feel that the path which has been taken by the government is the correct path. I'm a believer of that.
Thank you, sir. The next question is regarding charger, and what Pritish Chaudhary wants to ask is that each manufacturer is wanting to make charger compatible to their own model. So I think the question is asking, is there any attempt of standardizing this charging affair?
Yeah, there are. See, again, this is going to be really a problem, like using a Google phone or an Android phone or a Apple phone and all that. Today the situation is there, but Tesla has taken the lead to really put the heads together between some of the major OEMs and all to see that the charger, which is the either onboard charger or the external chargers, are standardized going forward. But the work has started. I think they don't still. I think we are far from reaching any kind of a solution on that, or agreed solution on that.
Is there any other question?
Sir, there is a question from Mr. Vikrant Yadav. He wants to know, does e-highways are tested in Sweden by Siemens? So is there a possibility of this kind of a success in India?
Very respectfully and without being critical, first we really need to have adequate amount of highways. We are really lacking that. E-highways far away. I don't know whether I do not have the wisdom with me to really envisage whether this is going to really make a sense. I really feel what is being done is to make good highways, which probably help us reduce the level of accidents. I think that is today preference. I would say that you all who are in Rajasthan and other states are very privileged, and I'm being critical of the state where I'm there. You see the highways, except Bombay, Pune, is really pathetic. Highways have to come to age. I think a lot of work is being done with a lot of speed and all that. Things have changed in Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, even Tamil Nadu, where I was there till 2 years or 1.5 years back. The highways are very good, but they have to come to the age. So e-highway, in my opinion, still little away.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, in the newspaper as well as in the various automobile magazines, we are hearing there is an impact of chip scarcity because of this kind of Chinese problem. So, sir, what solution do you foresee? And as a automotive manufacturing has taken a big hit because of this. So, what can be the solutions for this, sir?
See, little while ago, Dr. Tyagi shared that chips would be there everywhere and chips would be nowhere. Chips would be cheaper than the garbage and chips would be cheaper than scrapped papers. So this problem is temporarily, which is of course manufacturing being confined to a few manufacturers, which happened. But then it got aggravated also because Malaysia was closed for a very long time. There were issues in Taiwan also, which got aggravated and all that. But I guess this is a passing problem. And by first quarter of 2022, I think things should normalize in my humble assessment.
So, thank you, sir, for sharing your immense knowledge about automotive sector and for this enlightening lecture. And it's my proud privilege to propose vote of thanks to this August gathering. Our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Ashok Belani, Honorable Chairman, sir, with Dr. Tyagi, Professor APS Rathore, Mathur sir, Bhargav sir, Urmila ma'am, Nagar sir, Mrs. Bharadwaj, and all the lovely audience who joined us for this third Professor Bharadwaj Memorial Lecture. First of all, we are highly grateful to Mr. Ashok Belani, Group President at MD Value India, taking out time from his busy schedule to deliver such enlightening and insightful address. We thank our esteemed Chairman, sir, for his unmitigated support and encouragement in all the endeavors that we do at MNIT. We extend our warm and heartfelt thanks to Dr. Rathore, sir, for supporting and inviting his friend and batchmate as our esteemed guest speaker. We are especially thankful to the audience for their patient listening and support. We are grateful to the team of MIIC for their support in coordinating this event. I thank Mathur sir, Mittal sir for their belief in the team. And I also thank our team members, Dr. Patnaik, Sanjay sir, Kanishk for their support in organizing this event. I sincerely hope, Belani sir, that you'll honor us with such more motivating talks in this future for our students and even for us. Thank you all once again. Jai Hind.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm very humbled with this opportunity and thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you so much. I'm grateful.
Belani ji, I must say a very, very outstanding talk and a great talk. In fact, I had been monitoring automobiles quite some time, but the way you explained the kind of trends coming and regulations coming, it is simply superb. Hats off. It is really. In fact, I will request Monica ji, this talk, if you could host on the YouTube or on the video channels of the MNIT, then it will be a very good future reference also for the students. So if that
We will do that, sir.
Great. Excellent. Superb.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. I really greatly appreciate that.
बेलानी जी, आप जयपुर कब आएंगे?
सर, ये थोड़ा कोविड का डर खत्म होते ही, क्योंकि it's quite a while that I've been there, and I ensure we'll have opportunity soon.
I will request you come and spend 1 or 2 days at Jaipur with us. Visit the whole department, and also at that occasion we can have some more interaction with you, with the senior faculty. And as I apprise you that Mr. Rathore is taking very special efforts in now unifying all these 6 million years of experience of MNIT seniors. And you being one of the very eminent seniors, I request you to take a lead in this and guide your MNIT, our MNIT, for future heights. So we look forward for your more and more association with MNIT in the times to come. So
sir, I'm quite honored with your invitation. I feel so grateful about it. But I must confess to you one fact, truth or the reality. Mr. Rathore has been teaching in this institute for so many years, ever since we passed out. But I want to confess to you I have the distinction of being his first student. He used to teach me when we were studying together. And probably that is where he developed his love for teaching profession, sir.
That's really.
And this is truth, sir. This is the truth.
In the morning.
He cannot deny this.
I am honored, Belani Sahab. I am honored to have such a brilliant student as you.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored to have you as a friend.
Rathore sir, what I'll request is, like Mr. Balani is there, let us identify some 15 more illustrious alumni of MNIT. And sometimes we have a brainstorming interchange with them through web mode, another 1 or 2 hours duration. And I'll appreciate if Monica ji could initiate that. And let us be benefited more and more by the wisdom of our illustrious alumni like Mr. Balani. That will really help MNIT.
We
And
have,
sometimes invite you all to MNIT campus.
yes.
Balani, when did you visit the MNIT campus last?
Sir, could be 3 years back, sir. Maybe 2018-19, I would have come.
They have made lot of improvements. You will find that Vivekanand lecture theatre is
For the marriage.
there, and lush green
Yes.
MNIT. It's really a very good chase. We invite you to be with us for few days along with the family, and we look forward for your such visit.
Thank you, sir. I'm so honored with your invitation. And what a pride it is to really get associated in whichever humble form with my own institute where from I graduated. I'm really very humbled and very honored with your invitation, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We sign off from here.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I
sir.
wish you all a wonderful evening to all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So with your permission, we are closing this session, sir.
Good, Monica ji. Good team MNIT. And Ajay Rathore ji, all team.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Marvelous.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye, sir. Bye bye. Bye. चलो बंद कर दो, क्लोज कर दो.